Good morning, friends. So this is the last lecture of our diabetic series. This is the fourth lecture. So start with the remaining drugs. It is incretin mimetics. Incretin is a group of hormone that includes glucagon-like peptide GLP-1 and glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide GIP that are released after meals from the GIT and augment the glucose-dependent insulin secretion. Among them, GLP is the prominent insulinotropic incretin. It is metabolized by DPP-4 enzyme expressed on the luminal membrane of capillary endothelial cells, kidney, liver, gut mucosa and immune cells. So, this is the site at which it is metabolized. So, GLP-1 agonist, which increases the insulin secretion, decreases the glucagon release, delay gastric emptying and decreases the appetite by acting at the level of hypothalamus. This is the effect of incretin or GLP-1 agonist or GIP. Activating the specific GLP-1 receptor, which are cell surface GPCR, G protein coupled receptors expressed on beta cell and alpha cell, central and peripheral neurons, gastrointestinal mucosa, etc., etc. So these are the receptor for incretin, and incretin is degraded by DPP-4 at the site we discussed in last slide. Now the incretin system appears to promote beta cell health as well as by decreasing islet cell apoptosis. So it is increases health and decreases apoptosis. So this is the mechanism. 4 plus 5, this one. Failure of incretin has been implicated in the pathogenesis of beta cell dysfunction of type 2 diabetes mellitus, particularly for the progression of this disease. So in some time there will be a decreased insulin release due to incretin system dysfunction. So at that time, when we are going to give incretin or GLP-1 agonist from outer side, so the system will be reactivated and insulin release depends on the glucose in GI tract will be increased and diabetes mellitus will be in control. GLP-1 based therapy appears to be the most effective measure to preserve the beta cell function in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Okay. Now the drugs GLP-1 analogs, synthetic DPP-4 resistant analog which activates GLP-1 receptors are exenatide. It is inactive orally, so subcutaneous injection generally given. T1 is 3 hours, but duration of action is 6 to 10 hours. Injection subcutaneously before breakfast and dinner, which is used as an add-on drug to metformin, all sulfonylureas or a combination of this, or pioglitazone in poorly controlled diabetes to type 2 diabetics. Lowering of the postprandial as well as fasting blood glucose, HbA1c and body weight. So this is the pharmacological action. Now adverse effect of which the most time is nausea and vomiting, which can be perceived by almost 50% of the patients. So, but after some time tolerance will be developed. Many patients develop antibodies to exenatide, but its response is accentuated only in a few. Acute pancreatitis also one of the side effects, serious side effect of incretin or exenatide. Dose is initially 5 microgram subcutaneously before breakfast and dinner and increase up to 10 microgram BD if needed. Now second is liraglutide. It is given as a once daily injection alone or added to oral metformin plus sulfonylureas or pioglitazone. peak level is within 8 to 12 hours, elimination half-life is 12 to 14 hours. Adverse effect, nausea, anorexia, diarrhea, weight loss, that's why it is also approved for the obesity, necrotizing pancreatitis, which is rare but serious side effect, hypoglycemia, which is rare but can be seen. Others are abliglutide and dulaglutide, which are very long-acting GLP-1 receptor agonists, which need to be injected once weekly. Albiglutide and dulaglutide. These are other GLP-1 analogs other than exenatide and liraglutide. Okay, so this is the incretin, which include GLP-1 analog or GIP, which include exenatide, liraglutide and this albiglutide and dulaglutide. They increases the insulin secretion in response to the glucose in GIT. Okay, so ultimately these are the most effective drug which for the beta cell health. Okay, they increases the beta cell health and decreases their apoptosis. So this was the brief about incretin. Now other drug is amylin analog. Amylin, also called isolate amyloid polypeptide IAP. It is produced by pancreatic beta cell and is stored in the same granules as insulin and secreted along with insulin. It acts in a brain to reduce glucagon secretion from alpha cells and delayed gastric emptying and retard glucose absorption and promote satiety. Okay, so ultimately what they are doing, reduce glucagon secretion, delay gastric emptying, retard glucose absorption and promote satiety. Okay. Pramlintide, which is amylin analog, is a synthetic amylin analog on subcutaneous injection before meal. It accentuates postprandial glycemia and exerts a centrally mediated anorectic action. Okay. Duration of it's 2 to 3 hours use. It generally supplement the mealtime insulin injection when insulin alone fails to control postprandial glycemic peaks in both type 1 and type 2 diabetics. Okay. Adverse effects include hypoglycemia, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting and reduction in body weight. Now DPP-4 inhibitors, they provide nearly complete and long-lasting inhibition of dipeptidyl peptidase 4. They increases the proportion of GLP-1 from 10 to 20% to nearly 100%. So half-life of GLP-1 will be increased almost 5 to 10 times. They are orally active inhibitors of this enzyme, have been developed as a indirectly acting insulin secretagogues. DPP-4 inhibitors have emerged as an important adjunct drug in a type 2 diabetes mellitus. Blood sugar lowering efficacy is moderate compared to that of sulfonyl urease. So in the diagram we can see that when we are using DPP-4 inhibitor, the GLP-1 will be increased significantly. In both the diagram, GLP-1 and GIP is increased with DPP-4 against with no drug. Now, of which first drug is sitagliptin. It is the first DPP-4 inhibitor which is competitive and selective. It potentiates the action of GLP-1 and GIP and boosts the postprandial insulin release, decreases the glucagon secretion also. It lowers the mealtime and fasting blood glucose in type 2 diabetics. No effect on gastric emptying and appetite. So previously it was seen with other drugs, gastric emptying, appetite, amylin and GLP-1 analogs, but with sitagliptin effect of gastric emptying and appetite will be less. The HbA1c lowering achieved by sitagliptin is almost equivalent to that of metformin. Lowering of HbA1c by 0.5 to 1 to 1.2% when it is added to pioglitazone, sulfonylureas, insulin with or without metformin. Sitagliptin monotherapy only when metformin cannot be used. DPP-4 inhibitor primarily as an adjuvant drug in type 2 diabetes, not well controlled by metformin, SUs and pioglitazone or insulin. Plasma half-life is 12 hours and it is largely excreted unchanged in urine. So dose reduction is needed in renal impairment but not in liver disease. Adverse effect nasopharyngitis as substance P is also a substrate of DPP-4 whose level will be increased also, and cough, nausea, loose stools, headache, rashes, allergic reaction including some serious ones like angioedema, exfoliative dermatitis and edema. Vildagliptin, it binds to enzyme covalently and ultimately complex which dissociate very slowly forms, resulting in persistent DPP-4 inhibition. So even after the free drug has been cleared from the circulation, there will be an effect of vildagliptin can be seen. So longer duration of action, 12 to 24 hours, despite of short plasma half-life 2 to 4 hours can be seen with vildagliptin. Major route of elimination is hepatic metabolism, while 20 to 25% excreted from urine also. Dose reduction, that's why is needed in moderately severe liver disease and in kidney disease both. Tolerability of vildagliptin is similar to that of sitagliptin, but hepatotoxicity is reported. It requires twice daily dosing, single daily dose when combined with another hypoglycemic can be used. Third is saxagliptin, which binds covalently with DPP-4 and acts for 24 hours despite its plasma half-life is 2 to 4 hours as with previous one. Added to metformin, sulfonylureas plus pioglitazone, it causes HbA1c reduction similar to that caused by sitagliptin or vildagliptin. Drug interaction with CYP3/4 inhibitors can be seen. Dose 5 mg once a day, but it should be reduced to half in moderately severe liver disease, renal disease, but not in liver disease. Teneligliptin, it is also one of the most popular drug, anti-diabetic drug, which is nowadays commonly used. Teneligliptin, it is a new DPP-4 inhibitor having long lasting, which is more than 24-hour DPP-4 inhibition and anti-glycemic effect. Single morning dose postprandial hyperglycemia suppressed at all 3 meals of day. Therapeutic efficacy both as monotherapy as well as in combination with metformin plus sulfonylureas or a thiazolidinediones is comparable to other gliptins. Metabolites of teneligliptins are excreted by both liver and kidney, but no dose reduction is needed in patient with renal impairment. So, no cardiovascular adverse effect have been noted, but caution is to be exercised in a patient with prone to have a QT prolongation. Dose is 20 mg before breakfast daily, and it can be increased up to 40 mg per day if needed. Now, dopamine D2 agonist, it is a bromocriptine, a quick release oral formulation of bromocriptine taken early in the morning generally. It acts on hypothalamic dopaminergic control of the circadian rhythm of hormone, which include GH, prolactin, ACTH, etc., and then release and reset it to reduce insulin resistance. Bromocriptine can be taken alone to supplement diet plus exercise or to add it to metformin, all sulfonylureas or to both. It is started at 0.8 mg once a day and increase up to 4.8 mg, and it can lower the HbA1c up to 0.5%. Sodium glucose co-transporter 2 SGL2 inhibitor. Practically all the glucose filtered in the glomerulus is reabsorbed in the proximal tubules. But the major transporter for that is SGL2, sodium glucose co-transporter 2, whose inhibition induces the glycosouria and lowers the blood glucose in type 2 diabetes mellitus, and it causes weight loss. The drugs which inhibit this SGL2 is dapagliflozin and canagliflozin. SGL2 inhibitor used in type 2 diabetes mellitus patient. Once daily dosing produces round-the-clock glycosouria and lower the blood glucose levels. It is used alone or in combination with other anti-diabetic drugs. It reduces the HbA1c level by 0.5 to 1%, but they don't do the hypoglycemia. Adverse drug reaction include glycosouria, which can be predisposed to urinary and genital tract infections, electrolyte imbalances, ketoacidosis, and increased urinary frequency. It is generally contraindicated with the patient with renal insufficiency. Last one is bile acid sequestran, which is colesevelam. We have been gone through in the dyslipidemia chapter also. It is a bile acid binding resin which lowers the cholesterol as well as glucose level in blood. So it is an add-on drug in type 2 diabetes mellitus who are not properly controlled by other anti-diabetic drugs. Mainly it is having a mechanism action of reduction in farnesoid X receptor XR activation. So the HbA1c lowering efficacy of colesevelam is modest and GI upset is frequent with that. Epalrestate, which is a sorbitol, is a, first of all we have to learn about the sorbitol. The sorbitol is a minor metabolite of glucose which is generated by the enzyme aldose reductase. In diabetes, excess sorbitol is produced and gets deposited in the nerves and other tissues. So this is responsible for the pathogenesis of diabetic neuropathy and other complications. Epalrestate is an aldose reductase inhibitor. So ultimately, sorbitol from the glucose will not be generated. So it found to delay the sorbitol accumulation in sciatic nerve and other tissue of diabetic, imparting potential to delay the progression of diabetic neuropathy, the epalrestate. Modest improvement in nerve conduction, neuropathic pain and other symptoms can be seen. Magnitude of benefit and safety are yet to be defined. Adverse effects include nausea, vomiting and elevation of liver enzymes. So ultimately, now we have been gone through all the drugs, insulin, types of insulin and all the anti-diabetic oral hypoglycemic drugs. So now we can have a brief idea. So this is the flow chart of how to treat or manage the type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus after knowing all the drugs. So type 1, it is solely treated by diet plus insulin, which is controlled mainly. Now type 2 diabetes generally controlled with diet plus exercise plus metformin in the starting. If it is controlled, it is well and good. But if it is not controlled, then the patient in uncomplicated and well-nourished or obese patient, metformin plus one drug from the sulfonylurease or meglinetide or pioglitazone or DPP4 inhibitor or alpha glucosidase, one of the drug from this drug can be included. If it is controlled, then well and good. If it is not controlled, then metformin plus two drug, not one drug, from remaining sulfonylurease, meglinetide, DPP4 inhibitor included, or pioglitazone or alpha glucosidase inhibitor. So if it is controlled, then well and good. If it is not controlled, then switch over to insulin plus metformin plus one of the previous drug. So ultimately we have straight to the 4 drugs total. three drugs total before switching over to the insulin. Metformin plus other two drugs. After switching over to insulin, there is already insulin plus two drug is already is given, and ultimately the diabetes mostly controlled. Now in the patient which starting which is not controlled but having a severe diabetes with underweight and complication is present with pregnancy, infection or surgery, it is to be generally started with insulin plus metformin, and generally it is controlled. Okay, so insulin is generally used with metformin alone or metformin plus any other drug. Okay, now the methodology or management in somewhat detail. Both insulin and sulfonylureas reduced microvascular complication, which include retinopathy, neuropathy, nephropathy in type 2 diabetes mellitus. But sulfonylureas don't have significant effect on macrovascular complication, which include coronary artery disease and stroke. But metformin can reduce both microvascular as well as macrovascular complication. Now, status of oral antidiabetics in diabetes mellitus. Oral antidiabetics are indicated only in type 2 diabetes in addition to diet and exercise. They are most effective in the patient with age above 40 years at the onset of disease, obesity at the time of presentation, duration of disease is less than 5 years when starting the treatment, fasting blood sugar is less than 200 mg per deciliter, insulin requirement is less than 40 unit per day, no ketoacidosis or any type of complication history. So these are the ideal characteristics in which we can start the oral hypoglycemic drug. Now, the status of various oral antidiabetic drugs. To start with metformin, oral antidiabetic supplement the dietary management and not to replace it. Institute a metformin therapy right at the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes mellitus along with the dietary and other lifestyle measures which include exercise and all. It delays the progression of diabetic severity by favorably affecting the beta cell health and retarding the beta cell failure. Metformin, as we have learned, that it increases the insulin sensitivity or overcome the insulin resistance. Okay. It is especially valuable for the obese patient. It is having the potential to reduce the risk of myocardial infarction and stroke. Remember the metformin. We have learned that it decreases the LDL, VLDL and increases the HDL. So ultimately it decreases the macro and microvascular complication. Okay. So ultimately it reduces the risk of myocardial infarction and stroke. Unless contraindicated or not tolerated, metformin is prescribed to all 2 diabetes mellitus. Now sulfonylureas, it is the most commonly selected second drug. Good patient acceptability and convenient dosing and high efficacy, these are the characteristics. Weight gain and hypoglycemia are the side effect of sulfonylureas. Sulfonylureas given over the long term 2 to 10 year make the beta cell apoptosis and failure. So receptor desensitization are the other causes. So SUs tend to lose efficacy in few years. 5 to 10% per year failure rate with the SUs, but no difference in clinical efficacy of various second generation SUs. So this is the status of SUs. Now meglinides, which include rapaglinide and nataglinide. Patients with a near normal fasting blood glucose, SUs increases the second phase insulin, by meglinidide increases the first phase insulin. So patient with a near normal fasting blood glucose, but prominent postprandial hyperglycemia or those with experience late post-meal hypoglycemia can be started with the meglinidide. Pioglitazone, which is a third choice drug, may be added to metformin or a combination of metformin plus sulfonylureas. It is particularly useful for the patient with a prominent insulin resistance. Despite of its preserved beta cell function, and does not cause hypoglycemia. It is rarely selected for the monotherapy. Why? It is having a major limitation of fluid retention, weight gain, increased risk of heart failure and fractures, and need to monitor liver function. It is ineffective in significant number of patients. So sulfonylureas में क्या था? Beta cell apoptosis and dysfunction after some time therapy failure. Pioglitazone में क्या है? Risk of heart failure and liver failure. Okay, major limitation. A carbose, mild anti-hyperglycemic, mostly used as a supplementary drug to hypoglycemic regimen. Limitation of A carbose: bloating, indigestion and other abdominal symptoms. DPP-4 inhibitors. This is one of the latest and very efficient drug. Newer oral antidiabetic that have gained popularity now. Okay. Moderately HbA1c lowering compared to sulfonylureas. Limitation include angioedema, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, anaphylaxis, which have been reported. The impact on the cardiovascular mortality and other outcome is yet to be established. Newer drug, that's why it is yet to be established. Second line or add-on anti-diabetic drugs. It can be used as second line also. Valuable in patients having body weight problem and those experiencing frequent episode of hypoglycemia. So instead of sulfonylureas, after metformin, it can be very well used. Favorable features: insulin release is glucose dependent, occurs only at the higher glucose concentration, therefore not likely to cause hypoglycemia frequently. Suppresses the glucagon release, so lowering of fasting blood sugar glucose level is also seen. Improve the beta cell health. Sulfonylurea decreases the beta cell health. Retard the progression of beta cell failure. Good thing. Beta cell progression and hypoglycemia both are over and above the sulfonylureas. Body weight neutral. Sulfonylurea increases body weight. Can be used in patients with renal impairment. Single daily dose advantage. Well tolerated with a fewer side effect with no drug interaction except with saxagliptin. Now the insulin. Up to 50% of patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus initially treated with the oral antidiabetics ultimately will need insulin. Metformin alone or in combination with sulfonylureas or DPP-4 inhibitor is usually continued with the insulin. Single daily injection of long-acting like glargine insulin is used to provide the basal control, and oral drug is given before meal to serve the check postprandial glycemia, while metformin mainly reduces the hepatic glucose output. GLP-1 agonist, exenatide, liraglutide injected subcutaneously are an alternative to insulin in obese type 2 diabetes in whom weight gain is to be avoided. So these are all about the diabetes. Thank you.